Dragonflight will have a final villain, but unlike Shadowlands, we don't know who it's going to be. No, Blizzard wants us to explore the Isles, to experience the history of everyone on it, and let those stories intertwine. Just like a little expansion called Mists of Pandaria, the very expansion that Ian used to illustrate how we will interact with the Isles and the story. And what that means is that, in Ian's own words, we will learn our new villain through this story. There is a big bad, but, well, we can't imagine that character's just going to come out of nowhere. While it could be a new character, there's even a chance that the villain of Dragonflight is somebody that we know, and that they even went to buyraycon.com/Bellular, today's sponsor, where you will get 15% off your first order. Now, these are the wireless everyday earbuds. They're awesome, and there's no wonder they have got over 48,000 five-star reviews. They're a great package. That's even before our discount. The look and the feel is premium, just a really nice, nice in the hand. They're absurdly comfortable, which is massive for me, and they're also super compact in the ear. There's no big dangly ear stand, which I really appreciate. Oh, and here's the shake test I did. Suffice to say, they pass. Now, they're half the price of the usual suspects. That's pretty damn sweet. I love them being in-ears that come with a few different sizes, which is great because you get brilliant passive isolation, which is a must for me. Raycons have 32 hours of battery life and offer 8 hours of continuous playtime. I mean, I'm used to ones that have got 4 hours in the buds, so it's a major day-to-day upgrade. So, taking a break, touching grass up the hills, perhaps having a great time re-listening to the Endurance audiobook with him is just a wonderful experience. So hit up buyraycon.com/Bellular today and you will get 15% off your first order. There's even 5 gorgeous colors to choose from. Thanks, Raycon, and let's go. Mob's format was simple enough. Faction war and Sha stuff happened at the same time that we start to learn that the Zandalari are trying to resurrect an old Mogu tyrant, leading directly into patch 5.2, during which the Horde Rebellion was further set up as well. 5.3 saw the Horde split, and in 5.4, Garrosh ate the heart of an old god in a patch that brought most elements of Mists of Pandaria together. Sha, Klaxi, Pandaria itself, old gods, faction war. Various stories that wove into a conclusion quite successfully. So with that framework in mind, let's take a look at Dragonflight. First, what we know, the first raid against the Primal Incarnates. Much of their history is murky. We know, though, that they are said to follow Galakrond. We don't exactly know if that means they followed him when he was alive, that he perhaps still lives somehow, or that they are just dedicated to his legacy. They want more elemental power, and they are firmly against what the Titans did to dragonkind. Indeed, much stirs on the Isle, and that is what we will explore at the start. Awakening underpins this whole expansion. Azeroth is awakening. The first zone is called the Waking Shores. Something stirred the Watchers, the Jaredin, the Primalists, even the Drakthir. Steve actually told us that the island's threats are waking up alongside the Drakthir somewhat. There's then the mystery of what the Drakthir were created to fight against. Because, yes, Neltharion did make the Drakthir for some reason. Were they created to fight those primal incarnates, or something else that we don't know of yet? While we journey, we're going to learn more of the aspects, the gaps in the dragon's timeline, how each Dragonflight works, and we'll solve local problems on the Isles. We'll tackle the topic of time with the Bronze Flight. Taronda, Ysera, Night Elf stuff with the Greens, perhaps Elune as well. And then the future of the Black Flight with Wrathion, which I think could be extremely major to this expansion story, and of course the state of dragonkind with Alexstrasza, their leader. What is clear is that this could go in any direction. But for a video like this, I'd be remiss to leave out our 2 most obvious threats, the things that are very much in our mind. 2 simple facts for you. Number 1, the Primal Incarnates are linked to Galakrond. Number 2, the Bronze Dragonflight timeways will be explored in Thaldraszus, one of the zones, and of course, remember that BFA and Shadowlands had infinite dragons. So I guess that's technically 3 or 4 facts. But anyway, Galakrond was the massive drake that the Aspects helped Tyr defeat before the Aspects actually became the Aspects. This is many thousands of years ago. Now take a look at the Primal Incarnates, and then take a look at the Cosmos chart. You can kind of see that Galakrond would actually fit for Decay. Either this is background for Galakrond and we don't fight him, or somehow we do. Could Galakrond be resurrected? I suppose it could technically happen. Could we go back in time and fight Galakrond? That could actually happen too. Either way, as set up, Galakrond would have the potential to be a rather incredible fight. Now, the Bronze are involved in Dragonflight as well, and that likely means the Infinite Dragons, as we of course saw, the Infinite Pirate Dragon in Tazavesh. Could the Infinites try to change the timeline? And I suppose why? Would Murozond, spurred on by what he learned of Aman'Thul and the Titans, want to prevent his own ascension? Pretty crazy gambit, but that sort of thing has happened in media. And the idea of there being more to the Titans has been hinted at. Now, I want you to think of Murozond's final line that he says to us in the End Time Dungeon.
You know not what you have done, Aman'Thul. What I have seen.
Clearly something is at play. What did he mean by that? Well, Murozond is almost certainly against the Titans. The Primal Incarnates are also against the Titans. Galakrond against the Titans. And they're clearly all in opposition to us, and they're set up in a way where they could basically lead to each other. Imagine this, the Incarnates are defeated in 10.0. There is an Infinite Dragon attempt to prevent Galakrond being defeated in 10.1, leading into some sort of crazy raid with Murozond in 10.2. Anything like that could work. Either way, we could finally learn what Murozond's final words actually meant. Because that's something we've been speculating about for a long, long time indeed. Now, there are other ways that Murozond could be involved. For example, the villain, the true villain of the Deaths of Chromie scenario, that was left a mystery. The Infinite sure could be involved there, and funny enough, Wrathion was seen during the Deaths of Chromie. So, Galakrond and Murozond. I think you can see how they could quite clearly be dragon villains. But I'll tell you what, I've got another one. A villain that perhaps could channel a little bit of that Emmett Selk energy that people like so much. Wrathion then. In the deep dive, Steve dropped the bomb that somebody might be more worthy than Wrathion to be the Black Flight's aspect. Was that a slip? No, I don't think so. Now it's odd, because the only other black dragon we know of, there's a bit in that later, not really, is Ebonhorn. And of course he had to be saved from corruption. It doesn't really seem like the sort of thing he'd want. Also, let's be real, Wrathion had been a total dickhead, and he did get a hell of a lot of people killed, and he did inadvertently also work with the Infinite Dragonflight. Whoops. In Mists, he of course encouraged the faction war, then he worked with Kairos to make Warlords of Draenor happen, where, just in case you forgot, his whole goal was to kind of have that big infinite orc army to take over Azeroth to fight Old Gods and Legion. Now, of course, his world-protecting goals do appear again in 8.3. But what's clear is that Wrathion had been in the past an arrogant little shit. So that punch from Anduin, well, that was very well earned. Now, I'm not saying Wrathion's a bad character or a bad guy. He's a flawed guy who is absolutely the hero of his own story and who has an immense amount of potential. Now, given what he's done in the past and how he rationalized it at the time, there's a bit of a question of whether we would want him to lead the Black Flight. Sure, it seems like he's taken a turn now, but look at the things he was willing to do. Well, after 8.3, he said he was dedicated to protecting the world alongside us. So it doesn't seem like he's going to end up being a prime antagonist, unless the events of Dragonflight move him in that direction. You could say that Blizzard could easily Garrosh him if they wanted to, but at least Garrosh was set up quite well for that in Cataclysm. I mean, to play with that idea, if WoW was ever to have an Emmett-like villain, then I guess you could say it could be a Wrathion. Imagine Wrathion wants to be an aspect, Alexstrasza sees his reckless past decisions and decides that even in light of helping out in 8.3, he can't be trusted with the power, but Wrathion thinks he knows best. He still is a good guy on our side, but he does hatch a grand scheme that plays out through the patches, and oh dear, it doesn't go that well. There's a way to do that where he's a villain. There's also a way to do that where he's an ally who's a bit misguided, is trying a little bit too hard, and maybe accidentally unleashes something along the way. But to repeat his older arc, I think would be a bit of a mistake. What we know of is the direction of his arc, that it's going to be about the future, the sort of fate of the Black Dragonflight. We know that his goal is to basically restore their honor, restore them to their original pre-corruption purpose. And via an interview, we know that Alexstrasza is willing to put aside past differences and kind of help him along his journey. All I know is that Wrathion's quest is very likely to lead us to the true threat. Few characters are as relentless in their pursuit of goals as he. Okay, I'm going to give you two wildcards, and funny enough, both have a connection to Wrathion. Chromatus, the five-headed dragon fated to wipe out dragonkind. Neltharion created the Drakthir, and one of Neltharion's children, Nefarion, created Chromatus. The only thing that overcame Chromatus was the combined powers of the aspects. You know, combined power of the aspects, that's basically like Drakthir magic. Even can remind you of the Dragon Soul itself. Now to top it all off, Chromatus was not killed. Chromatus was imprisoned. They couldn't destroy its body. So there is big potential here to bring Chromatus back, especially after finding a chromatic dragon on a Battle for Azeroth island. Now this isn't solid though, and it could be a bit of a stretch bringing in a villain that's only been seen in a book, but introducing him to the game's audience through maybe a quest with Wrathion to, reform the Blackflight and lead it and whatever, that could work, because ultimately Chromatus is the creation of Wrathion's uncle. Next, the Twilight Dragons. I think I have to mention those, because along with the Infinite, they have been fighting for that Hour of Twilight. Now, this does not feel like a Void expansion or anything like that. I think they would do these in a way that's very much grounded as being dragons, but we know the flights are coming back, so there could be a little bit of a Voidy story, in the background. Because there's more flights than just the 5 that we think of immediately. I think it's more like 9. Anyway, the thing you've got to remember with the Twilight Dragons is from the Legion Shaman artifact quest, where Syntharia, aka Sinestra, the prime consort of Deathwing, still lives. And by the way, she's also Wrathion's grandmother. I don't know if that means anything, but if I can draw some links on the board, I'm definitely going to. Okay, time to pick up that thread I left dangling earlier. There is a Black Dragon mystery. Where did the uncorrupted ones from Battle for Azeroth Island expeditions come from? Now, fighting them is what gave us the uncorrupted scale that we then turned into one of Wrathion's agents, and that led to the first time Dragon Isles had ever been mentioned inside World of Warcraft. It was like basically the first proper canonical mention. Now, we've got no idea where these Black Dragons came from. Wrathion didn't even seem to know about this. I mean, in 8.3, he said Ebonhorn was his only brother. I can't speculate too much, other than that these Black Dragons were hostile to us in the Island Expedition. They called themselves Earth Warders, and they felt that Azerite was theirs by right. Which is funny, because you think about even what some of the Primal Incarnates may end up talking about. Now, when we try to think about this, we sort of think, well, who leads these Black Dragons? A few things come to mind. I mean, that whole thing about there being a competing claim to be the Black Dragon aspect, right? So it could be a battle between these characters, Wrathion and whoever this may be, for the future of the Black Dragons. And if these Black Dragons that we met in the Island Expedition are hostile, they're kind of like dragon supremacists, then I guess Wrathion is the one on our side, and there could be some natural conflict there. Also, who are they led by? I mean, are they just an old clutch of eggs, somehow uncorrupted, that finally hatched? Or is there maybe like a mysterious broodmother at their head? We don't know, but the Dragon Isles could very much reveal something. Something new then. Could there be a new villain? Yes. I mean, I just talked about that Black Dragon group from the island that we really know nothing about. But then there's the question of what is underneath the Dragon Isles. Is there anything there? I mean, who knows, but there's a lot of Titan technology just lying around. We can guess. I mean, again, the big arc here is awakening. That means Azeroth as well. In the cinematic, when the Watcher wakes, the water is filled with Azerite. Azerite-looking stuff that those black dragons said they had a claim to. Then we get the Jadarin, the elemental half-giants who fight dragons. Dragons, of course, themselves are descended from the elements. What is the connection there? Could there be a strange new villain in that? There could be. Then, in the deep dive, Steve told us that the energy that returned to the Dragon Isles was elemental. Of course, that all ties into Azeroth's very deep history, perhaps even with the element of spirit being consumed. Maybe that's part of the reason why the Primal Incarnates are our first raid. That is a raid about the elements, but it's also a raid about the dragon's role as defenders of Azeroth, because those incarnates do not agree with all of the, Titan aspect-y stuff. Of course, like Garrosh, the big bad will really, as in MoP, weave together all the things that we've learned as we quest through the Isles. Many people might think Wrathion there, and I think he could be an element of something, but also think about Murozond. We kind of know that guy before he turns evil. We could get a Chromatus, we could get a Galakrond, but we could also get something entirely new that manages to bind all of this lore together into one big bad. What did Neltharion create the Drakthir to fight? Was it just primal incarnates imprisoned away, or is there something more? If I was to end this by giving my final personal bet for this story, I would say there is a decent chance Murozond will be our main villain, and they may try to tie all of this suspicion about the creations of the First Ones fulfilling their purpose into a thing that ties into Murozond's final line from End Time. Because, of course, that's Murozond, that's his death, but it's all timey-wimey bullshit, right? So just because that Murozond died then doesn't mean that there could be another fork in the timeline that could come back to play with us, to mess things up. So there could be something like that. Of course, it's important if they do that they very much tie that into the characters and that it feels grounded instead of, okay, basically do that in a way that involves the words First Ones being said precisely 0 times through the entire expansion. And that is possible because suspicion about Titans has been, bubbling up for the last while, especially with Murozond's final line. So there is one potential bet. As for, Ysera, Greens, Tyrande, Night Elves, Elune, I think that will be a B plot. It might weave in, but I don't think it's going to provide us with our final villain. The other thing, aside from Murozond, that has a great chance is Wrathion, not as a prime villain, but Wrathion's quest, probably decently aggressively exposing things on the island, and Wrathion being just, brutally relentless in trying to pursue his goal, which I think could really work. He is a fan favorite character. He's one of those guys with a complicated, murky past. Really, he was such a dickhead in the past. But he also has his reasons, and he has a great screen presence too. Which just makes me think, actually, this could all be really great. I really enjoy Bronze Dragon lore and Infinite Dragon lore. I really enjoy Wrathion as a character. I like dragons in general. It's all just shaping up to be quite up my alley, whatever this end villain is. So there you have it. A big thank you to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Hope you found this interesting. Let me know who you think the final villain is going to be. And, of course, I'll see you next time.